In 1821, coal kept Britain's engines running, yet moving it was slow, costly, and left fortunes trapped underground. The world had never seen a public steam railway. The Stockton and Darlington Railway would change that forever, driven by a Quaker financier, a visionary engineer, and a gamble on steam. But what really forced this leap? And how did it redefine the modern world? Coal seams stretched beneath the hills of County Durham, yet profit moved no faster than a horse's pace. By 1820, the bottleneck was clear. Canals and roads could not keep up with the demands of factories, shipyards, or the swelling towns along the Tees. For Edward Pease, a respected Quaker wool merchant in Darlington, the problem was more than business. His family's fortune and his community's livelihood depended on moving coal to port. Yet every year, high costs and slow transport left thousands of tons stranded underground. Letters from Pease reveal a deep moral struggle. As a Quaker, he was taught to avoid speculation and ostentation. Yet he felt a duty to serve both commerce and conscience, writing of his hope to benefit the town, the poor, and the country. In 1821, Pease took a decisive step. He gathered a group of local colliery owners and businessmen and petitioned Parliament for the right to build a railway from the coal fields near Shildon to the port at Stockton. The vision was ambitious: a public railway, open to all, with wagons pulled by horses. After months of debate and fierce opposition from canal companies and landowners, the Stockton and Darlington Railway Act received royal assent that April. For the first time, a railway was authorized by law to carry both goods and passengers. But the plan was not yet revolutionary. The original scheme called for horses, not steam. That changed when George Stephenson, a self-taught engineer from Northumberland, visited Pease in Darlington. Stephenson had built colliery engines that ran on rails, and he believed steam could do the work of dozens of horses. At a tense meeting, he made his case. Let the locomotive be tried. Stephenson's conviction, backed by practical experience and a growing reputation, persuaded Pease and the board to gamble on steam. The decision would multiply the line's capacity, slash costs, and set a precedent for every railway that followed. Pease took on the financial risk, raising over £120,000, an immense sum, much of it from fellow Quakers and local investors. The project was now more than an experiment. It was a leap of faith, blending moral responsibility, business ambition, and the bold promise of steam. With the act secured and Stephenson's engines on order, the Stockton and Darlington Railway moved from dream to funded reality. The challenge ahead: to carve a railway across fields, rivers, and stubborn hills, and prove that steam could drive a new era. The first rails arrived at Stockton in the spring of 1822. Men known as navvies, some local, many drawn from distant counties, took up picks and shovels and began to carve a path through fields, marsh, and stubborn hillsides. Their days stretched from dawn until the last light faded, muscles burning as they set stone blocks and hammered iron rails into place. Folk songs from the period remember the mud, the blisters, and the pride these workers carried. By the end of 1824, 25 miles of track traced a line from the collieries at Shildon to the port at Stockton, measured to a precise gauge of 4 feet, 8.5 inches. This width, chosen by George Stephenson, would one day become the world standard. Bridges rose where rivers cut the route. The Skerne Bridge, designed in stone by Stephenson, arched gracefully over the water near Darlington. Built to withstand the weight of iron and steam, it endures as the oldest operational railway bridge in the world. Elsewhere, the land climbed too steeply for a locomotive's pull. At Brusselton and Etherley, stationary engines wound thick ropes, hauling wagons up inclines that horses or steam could not yet conquer. Each mile of progress left behind a patchwork of embankments, cuttings, and timbered crossings, all shaped by sweat and calculation. In Stephenson's Newcastle workshop, a different kind of labor unfolded. Here, craftsmen assembled the line's first steam locomotive. Locomotion No. 1, as it would be called, featured a single flue boiler, vertical cylinders, and 8 iron wheels. It was a prototype in every sense, leaky, noisy, and prone to breakdowns, but powerful enough to promise a new era. The engine's design drew on hard-won lessons from the mines: wrought iron for strength, coupling rods to synchronize the wheels, and a blast pipe to coax more heat from the fire. The cost of building the line and its engines soared to £120,000, a fortune at the time, but each innovation pushed the project closer to reality. By the summer of 1825, the iron road was nearly complete. Locomotion No. 1 stood ready, its brasswork polished and its firebox waiting. The navvies gathered for pay, their work nearly done. Stephenson's team made final adjustments, tightening bolts and testing the engine's valves. In the workshops and on the embankments, anticipation grew. The line was ready for its first public trial, and the world was about to witness the power of steam on rails. At dawn on September 27, 1825, the Stockton and Darlington Railway opened its line to a spectacle the country had never seen. Locomotion No. 1 stood ready, steam rising, as 450 passengers climbed aboard wagons and the specially built experiment coach. Along the route, crowds swelled. Estimates reached 40,000, packed onto bridges, fields, and embankments, all eager to witness the promise of steam. The train lurched forward, gathering speed until it reached nearly 15 miles per hour. Hats flew, bands played, and the iron road thundered with a noise few had imagined possible. But the excitement brought problems. The original cast iron rails, battered by the weight and vibration of the locomotive, cracked and shifted. Engineers responded within months, replacing them with stronger wrought iron, a material that could flex and withstand the pounding of heavy engines. The spectacle of the opening run also exposed new dangers. Passengers crowded onto open wagons, jostling for space, while onlookers pressed dangerously close to the moving train. There were minor mishaps, derailments, overloaded carriages, and near misses as the crowd surged. Within 3 years, the first serious accident struck. In March 1828, a boiler explosion at Simpasture Junction killed a fireman and scalded another. The inquest found that safety valves had been fixed down, trapping steam until the boiler burst. The company responded at once. New rules required regular inspection of safety valves, operator training was tightened, and engineers redesigned boilers to make tampering nearly impossible. These first tragedies forced the railway to professionalize, laying the groundwork for a code of safety that would spread far beyond County Durham. Spectacle had proven the power of steam. Now, discipline and innovation would make it safe. Coal once moved at a trickle, but after the Stockton and Darlington Railway opened, the price of transport from pit to port dropped by nearly half. For the towns along the line, this was not just a statistic. It meant more jobs, busier markets, and new factories rising where fields once lay fallow. Darlington's population doubled within a decade, swelling with workers, merchants, and families drawn by the promise of steady wages and cheap fuel. Investors who had risked their savings saw joint stock shares climb, some fortunes multiplying fourfold by the 1840s. The railway's success became a beacon. Engineers and financiers from Europe and America arrived to study its methods, sketch its bridges, and measure its rails. One detail, almost incidental at first, would shape the world: the gauge between the rails, set at 4 feet, 8.5 inches by George Stephenson. This exact width soon spread beyond County Durham, adopted first by the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, then by lines in France, Russia, and the United States. Within a generation, it was the backbone of rail networks on every continent, a silent standard that bound distant cities and nations together. 2 centuries on, the impact still echoes. In 2025, the bicentenary of the Stockton and Darlington Railway draws visitors from around the globe to Skerne Bridge and the old trackbed. Commemorations and exhibitions celebrate not just a line of iron and stone, but the moment when ambition, investment, and ingenuity redrew the map of the modern world. On September 27, 1825, over 40,000 people witnessed the world's first public steam-hauled railway journey, as Locomotion No. 1 carried 450 passengers and coal across 25 miles of track. The Stockton and Darlington Railway proved that steam power could move people and goods faster and cheaper than ever before, cutting transport costs by half and sparking economic growth throughout the region. The adoption of wrought iron rails and the creation of early safety codes set standards that shaped railways worldwide. Yet some details, such as the day-to-day experiences of early railway workers, remain lost, with limited records surviving. Today, the Stockton and Darlington Railway's standard gauge is used on most global railways, and its legacy will be honored at bicentenary events in 2025. The evidence is clear. The Stockton and Darlington Railway did not just change the way coal moved. It transformed how societies connect, trade, and grow.